The Grand Bazaar of Nexus Station hummed with the chaos of 1,000 worlds colliding. Holographic advertisements flickered in languages both spoken and thought-based, while merchants from across the galaxy hawked their wares beneath the artificial sky that cycled through alien sunsets. It was here, in the most cosmopolitan hub of known space, that Kalen set up his modest stall. His hands, calloused and paint-stained, arranged the ornaments with careful precision. Glass spheres caught the light, refracting it into rainbow patterns. Wooden stars bore intricate carvings that told stories of Earth's ancient winters. Paper snowflakes, impossibly delicate, seemed to float within their protective cases. Each piece was handmade, each one unique, each one a fragment of a tradition that most of the galaxy had never heard of. Christmas Ornaments, the sign read in Universal Standard. Below it, in smaller letters, Human Traditional Decorations. The Valkyrie merchant in the adjacent stall, a being that resembled a crystalline mantis, chittered something that the translation implant rendered as laughter. You expect to sell those here? Primitive handicrafts when we have molecular printers that can create perfect beauty. Kalen smiled politely, as he had learned to do. They're not about perfection. They're about meaning. More laughter, this time from a passing Threnodai couple, their chrome exoskeletons gleaming. One of them paused long enough to examine a hand-painted glass ball depicting a snow-covered village. How quaint. Do humans still believe in such rustic sentimentality? We do, Kalen replied, his voice steady despite the heat rising in his chest. We always have. The day wore on with similar encounters. The advanced races of the galaxy, the Valkyrie with their quantum computing, the Threnodai with their cybernetic perfection, the Zareth with their psionic manipulation of matter, all passed by with varying degrees of amusement or dismissal. Humanity, the newest members of the Galactic Assembly, were still seen as charming primitives, clever enough to have achieved faster-than-light travel, but hopelessly attached to their outdated customs and handmade trinkets. Kalen had heard it all before. Earth's ambassador had faced similar condescension during the accession ceremonies. Human art was considered endearingly simple. Human music, lacking in mathematical complexity. Human traditions, anthropologically interesting, but ultimately irrelevant. But Kalen had not traveled 300 light-years to be discouraged by snobbery. As the station's artificial sun began its descent toward evening, a commotion rippled through the bazaar. Vendors straightened, conversations hushed, and even the most arrogant merchants adopted poses of respect. Kalen looked up from the ornament he'd been repairing to see the crowd parting like water before a ship's bow. She moved through the bazaar with fluid grace, her scales catching the light in ways that made Kalen's glasswork seem dull by comparison. Princess Vash of the Dragon Imperium was everything the stories claimed, 7 feet of predatory elegance, wings folded against her back, eyes that burned with an intelligence older than human civilization. The Draconis were the galaxy's apex species, their empire spanning thousands of worlds, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic, their warriors undefeated in 10,000 years of recorded history. And she was walking directly toward his stall. Kalen's mouth went dry. The Valkyrie merchant beside him had actually prostrated itself, pressing its crystalline carapace against the floor. The Threnodai couple had fled entirely. Vash stopped before his display, her massive head tilting as she examined his work. Her claws, each one capable of rending steel, hovered delicately over a particularly intricate snowflake design. "These are made by hand," she said. It wasn't a question. Her voice resonated with harmonics that bypassed his translator entirely, speaking directly to something primal in his brain. "Yes, Your Highness," Kalen managed, remembering to bow but not grovel. Humanity had earned its place at the galactic table. He would not dishonor that by scraping like the Valkyrie. "Each one is unique." "Unique," she repeated, the word rolling like thunder. "Not replicated. Not optimized by algorithm. Not perfected by artificial intelligence. No, Your Highness. Just made. With hands and time and care." Her laugh was surprisingly gentle, nothing like the mocking sounds he'd endured all day. "Do you know what my people have lost, little human? In our 10 millennia of empire, in our mastery of space and time and matter itself." Kalen shook his head, not trusting his voice. "This," Vash said, and her claw, delicate despite its size, lifted a simple wooden star. It was one of his earliest pieces, carved from oak wood he'd carried all the way from Earth. The understanding that imperfection is not weakness, that something made slowly, carefully, by mortal hands, carries a value that no quantum computer can calculate. She held the star up to the light, examining the tiny irregularities in the wood grain, the slight asymmetry that marked it as handmade. Then, to Kalen's astonishment, she carefully threaded a silver chain through the ornament's loop and fastened it around her neck. A wooden star, no bigger than a human palm, resting against scales that had turned aside plasma weapons. A Christmas ornament adorning the princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The bazaar had gone absolutely silent. "I will take this," Vash declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the market. "Not because it is perfect, but because someone cared enough to make it imperfect. Because it speaks of a species that remembers that the journey matters more than the destination, that the making matters more than the made." She looked directly at Kalen, and he saw something in those ancient eyes that he hadn't expected: respect. "Your people are young, Kalen of Earth, but you remember things we have forgotten. Perhaps that is why the galaxy needs humanity more than we knew." She reached into a fold of her ceremonial robes and produced a credit chip that made Kalen's eyes widen. It was enough to fund his workshop for a decade. "That's too much," he began. "It is not enough," Vash interrupted gently. "You have reminded me of something precious. A gift of such value cannot be measured in mere credits." She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at the crowd that had gathered. Valkyrie, Threnodai, Zareth, and a dozen other species, all watching in stunned silence. "Humanity's ornaments may be simple," the Dragon Princess said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "But they understood something we lost in our pursuit of perfection, that the most beautiful things in the universe are those made with love, not precision. Remember that, people of the assembly. Remember that the newest among us may yet teach the oldest." As she walked away, the wooden star gleaming against her chest, the bazaar erupted in chaos. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see Kalen's ornaments. The Valkyrie merchant was apologizing profusely. The Threnodai couple had returned, credit chips in hand. But Kalen barely noticed. He was watching Vash disappear into the crowd, wearing his simple handmade star like a crown jewel. And for the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, Kalen felt that humanity truly belonged among the stars.